mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
This summer was definitely like, I don't think I'll ever work at an engineering program. He's very good looking.
So
He's
four
not
of
bad.
you.
Yeah. So
What
they
was
have
that
talks.
feel
A
like?
friend of mine.
Well, you
Like
have
what
to
was
join
your
us.
first book
No,
for?
I can.
It was
Just
so,
you go
I
on,
felt
they
like
look pretty
it was
I
very
was-
zoning
Yeah.
camp,
Yeah.
Yeah.
how it reads zoning,
So,
how to work around zoning, and it wasn't
Yeah.
anything. I had like kind of a rut in the middle of the summer because I didn't.
How was the party?
The graduation party.
The party for
And it was very scary. I was like, I've never felt that way before. So
Do you know?
it was very fast paced. I worked on like 30
I guess
projects
you do
this
know.
summer.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Well,
none of
I
them
have-
are,
For
some of them I'm
for
not
31
doing,
years.
but
Oh, I
most of them are
think
things I
like
would never want to do in my life, you know.
So glad to learn this.
So,
Yeah.
I still remember ours.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Engineering firm.
Yeah.
We were actually
Yeah.
at,
and the
we had
students
yesterday
were so
I read
inspiring.
we went to
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah?
I'm not a professional, I'm an engineer.
Don't say
Who are you?
And the Saturday,
Yeah.
The students didn't really get it, because then we were standing in front of the family, so.
Three and
when you think about next summer,
I'm not a, my son is 34 and he's not involved
I put
in
them
the
all
field at all. He does clinical trials.
I definitely will strengthen the.
They work it out.
Yeah, yeah.
There.
So, but I mean, it was just, for me, it was just a real time.
actually, the
I said,
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
No idea.
and something
I
was
wanted to
so this was
I
so
mean, we did
Not
some,
more than
I
what
can give you the name.
Morristown, so
That was a
we
big
battle, and I knew a little bit about the civil wars there, but the Washington.
Land, the landscape.
So I
And
learned
the way they were,
for the students, it's important that they know.
one owner was talking, it was
He left
very
already?
much.
Yeah.
And we have students in Westfield.
Okay.
right, and
Very
one
nice.
of them came.
I was
one
all
of them
the-
came.
You
Yeah,
told
I
me
Works for a
all
landscape.
Knowing, understanding CAD and zoning was
Oh,
really
That's
no,
the
I know
name
you
you can't
refer to
forget.
it. Well,
It
my,
wasn't
he
anything I had done in the class before.
lives in
People from,
Then I was like, oh my god, I'm never gonna complain about class ever again. So.
Can I remind you on that one?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And something, well, this is super bad there,
Not
then
in
for the
detail.
whole.
I know.
It was like
Yeah, yeah. I was in Ralph, that's like.
about the original site, the one
Right.
however, 2 months before, like a month ago,
And that's what.
the state
yeah, no,
told
it's
us,
good for
nope,
the
you
students
can't do
also to
this.
see it alone.
That's good.
One thing
Because
about
of the deed
undergrads,
restrictions and there's no
they
way.
don't
That was the deed restrictions on the island, so strict
Yeah.
that you cannot do this.
Yeah.
So I want to be real, and they actually, the lady in charge said, nope,
My
my name affiliated with
I
it.
hope you take it.
So,
My
we were kind of, okay.
Whatever
I
you
don't think,
is
I
good.
don't think so.
Yeah.
Look like we're talking in this situation, they have,
And equally important is your
our
paper.
residential
Thank you,
center.
Sam.
You are at the
Trained from
and
Philadelphia
for
City,
one.
the light rail from the professional degree.
Yeah.
Very few under that.
How do you?
Yeah,
And
so, I was just,
Well, she's on the historic preservation.
Yeah.
And the town is super, super on board. As soon as I reached out to them and said,
And she came with
And
me
totally
to
different,
Rutgers
yeah.
and
classes when we heard
That is so
students
cool.
give
so
their
there's
presentation. She came
Yes.
to
That's good.
because you know you can be kind of
Yeah.
so
The students who work in
talking about that was done
Once
in
you
May
take a
last year.
job,
Mm.
you push it.
And they took it back to brand new, they're moving along, and so the
I know.
relatives that we do
the same.
planning ideas and designs that shall
I know.
be
very
for
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a good idea. Because I really like
I've been teaching at Rutgers.
theoretical studios, but sometimes it's like too out
This
there.
is way more fun.
Having
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like
We didn't have enough.
No, it will be,
Yeah.
Now we have a lot of students.
Oh, yeah.
And Julie, we're getting to be regular meetups.
Hey, David, how are you? I'm here.
Nancy, let me introduce you to Dr. Hoefer. Nancy
How do you do it?
Priest.
Nice to meet you.
And you might remember.
Yes, you do, I remember, yes, of course.
And this is one of the students, Lily, from architecture.
Yeah.
Brunswick team.
Good.
Good friends with
So,
each
It
other.
is a
we got
very,
rid of
very
some
good.
grass, so-
But
And it was actually good.
Never.
But they can be the
hey,
Alright, find the seats. Actually, we still have a little.
Beauty, they're all.
if it is not enough,
Yes, and but that's whether you want to see the fabric.
Right, I missed that. She showed me in class. That always wrote me.
Yes, yes, so this is the Holocaust.
One student actually.
hey, you refer me, you pay, whatever. Enjoy it. If you enjoy it, it's worth it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. And then,
So there's, fully.
yeah.
I've never wanted to find a picture of a young couple and find out if this is the couple that was at the event.
No, it's,
It's, it,
no, it's not.
it used to be more complicated, there weren't many flags.
One more chair.
Yeah, because that's
It's strategic. And I do work with the
Solid.
Doesn't mean that you should sit with the fire. You want to see pictures.
United first, when you were in
I-
Japan later.
Oh, right.
Yes, yes, but they were serviceable.
Absolutely.
They do Frankfurt.
Yeah.
And those countries with country destinations, they do.
Hey, how are you?
And now they're
Good to see you.
Hi there, Julie Bell.
Munich, and,
Welcome. So her
So,
the
And that is,
Yes, yes. This one.
seeing you have a long
This guy was inspiring. Very well.
Hi, hi. I'm Sam. You are our gentleman. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, all definitely. Yeah. I'm so glad you learned that. I totally remember you were so excited about that internship. And heard the invitation, I didn't want to be too obvious.
And they're friends of
We're on the same track.
And he wrote the book. Two books.
Well, oh yeah, no worries about it. No, it's good.
Part one and part two.
You didn't lose anything. You gained experience, but you
we've been members for about a year and a half. When
you're really miserable going in every morning.
which we have.
That's a very good thing.
I'm excited to, because I'm this teaching assistant for construction 3D. So I'm excited to work with Sean, who's the,
Yeah, you know him, right?
oh my gosh, he's really funny. He's really, we had a talk on the phone. And he was telling me like, oh, so
My grandchildren.
So I'm a little scared. Yeah.
Across the street from everything.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just like, I'm scared for them.
No, but it's just,
Right, right, yeah.
overall
the first part is all of the
Ich stand this time of the
cemetery was established in
and they sound
360.
crazy harmony.
Yeah.
And it is occupied
I like to use myself.
with the structure
It was
of the
identified by
that tested
that
which I
stood out on the
brought
street and said, that's going to be the
Yeah.
Try to
church
use
walk the lane.
Yeah.
when you started
And second residence.
Yeah.
at least it showed me that you had
Everything that's been written,
Yeah.
I put in the book as written now over the years. Some of those IP songs by one of the authors.
so when we would
I just sent it out.
Fix that in some places.
Oh,
The second part, the Boy Scouts helped out. They used pipe from three different sources. I think all the
Got it, got it.
additional
polling that,
Yeah.
and then of course you still have the three main sections active.
I saw something on Instagram about them redoing it too.
Just call it,
Right,
if you
Westfield,
want a
yeah.
tour sometime.
And I saw all the comments and they're so 50-50. It was really cool to see. Because this was only like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, great.
And I don't have Westfield on my album, so it was very out of the blue.
Very cool.
1 hour.
No, just
No,
like
like the
7
town.
years ago.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Big hour one.
So I hope to, so I gave several people like,
15-minute one I give to the,
Most people don't
so
know.
the third grader back in school. Well, I get my
and so showing these images can hopefully be.
welcome.
So, let's go over early.
I know, and it's on
Because it's
like master's thesis chair. So
Yeah.
I haven't seen him also, but I want to Amber texting him and also something. I was doing it in Philadelphia as an engineering. Yeah, very That's totally, that's exactly what he was doing. Something baseline that I didn't know. What do you have like value for
Some
something
places,
you're trying to
some places like when we're in this book,
Beginning with
Wolfram Hoefer, he's also been like my everything teacher for the past 9 years. And then he still have master's chair and also now he helped me with like our travel issues and exercise things. Which is cool. And I was like, so I would not have
yeah, I would be totally different.
Yeah, I definitely.
Good guys. From your church.
Oh, yeah, yeah, every, well, now,
At this time of the year.
Oh, it's coming up. There's one in September. The concerts are great,
Yeah, always.
very high level.
Yes.
Good.
How moving was that? Did you do any of the tours in the car? No. Do you know them? No. So you hire.
You have these, I don't, yeah. One is good.
They're two different things.
Thank you.
This is the National Parks Trail map, and it tells the story of the trail. And you see Westfield is marked on the map.
Okay, great.
After 7 years, how it worked, we have Westfield on the map.
oh, good.
That doesn't happen very often with the National Park Service.
Thank you.
So I guess we wait a few more minutes, but the weather's so bad and that makes people probably be falling in a little bit. So just like 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, no worries.
I didn't know that like transfer so much out of Rutgers as like workers.
Yeah, there's just things really related with it.
Yeah. I worked at like a Jewish Center of Life international thing, and one of the women came from the business school and then came to the builder center, and so they were like totally separate things. One's not.
Give the presentation.
I did something like it's a different legal.
It was about 6 months ago.
She was always complaining about the onboarding, even though she already did all of it. She had three, like, do it. With the students, but I didn't want to look into it, so I didn't hear too much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm actually impressed that you all came today. Thank you. I am so pleased to welcome Dr. Wolfram Hoefer. He is a professor of landscape architecture at Rutgers University, and I'm really excited about today's presentation. But first, I also want to thank Juliette Diddell. She has been instrumental in setting up some of these types of programs for us for the Washington-Rochambeau Trail. I'm going to allow her to say a few words because she's kind of the local heroine when it comes to our local history with, if you know that the Triangle Park is now renamed for the Washington-Rochambeau Trail. So I'm going to let her say a few words about that. Please just turn off your phones or set them to vibrate. And thank you both. So thank you, Dr. Hoefer. Thank you, Julia.
Jennifer, appreciate
And
it.
enjoy every moment.
Thank you. So are we live streaming, Jen?
Yes, we are live streaming.
Thank you, Jennifer, for being so hospitable to the story of the Washington-Rochambeau Revolutionary Route National Historic Trail and how Westfield has made an impact on on the trail. Gosh, was it over a year ago that I did a cold email to Dr. Hoefer, inviting him to participate in a project And lo and behold, Dr. Hoefer saw the benefits for his students and his department and responded positively. And it's been a great process, learning how students work on a master plan. And we have one of the students here today, Lily. Thank you for coming, Lily. The students were really creative. They spent some time here in Westfield, and I appreciate the effort that they put into it. I want to recognize, first of all of you who have contributed to supporting this effort, Nancy Priest and David Rogers, historians that have come before us, and Sam Sharma, one of our great supporters, Ann Freeman on the Westfield Historic Preservation Commission, my husband, Eric Diddell, who's had to live with me all these years. So thank you. And without any further ado, I'll introduce to you Dr. Wolfram Hoefer from Rutgers. Dr. Hoefer.
Julie, thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for the Westfield Library to give us the space. And this is something I've never, ever done before. I never spoke about student work. Usually, the students do their work, present, and we discuss the presentation of the students. However, now there's no classes, and the semester will start next week. So, Julie asked me to give like a summary of the thoughts and outcomes that students did. And Lily, I hope I'm not messing up too much. All right? So we all know the Washington-Rochambeau Trail. Don't have to say much, I think, to this audience, basically that the troops also in this very important stage of the War of Independence came through Westfield. And your group, Julie, remember those pictures from the dedication of the Washington-Rochambeau Park, trail park here. And then we all walked the trail, basically. Like, this is the path, this is Mountain Avenue, this is where everybody walked, and where we, also the troops walked in the time. So, as you mentioned, Julie, you reached out to us and for the first feasibility explorations. And so you organized the funding by Union County Office of Cultural and Heritage Affairs. And I was able, out of this small funding, pay one of our grad students, an MLA candidate, Josh Cover, who did some investigations. Where did actually the path go? What are the other opportunities in town? So like this brief investigative study, and he came up with that idea and the thought about, well, the troops just passed through. Like nothing really happened. They kind of walked by, right? And so this is the image that shows like the walk by, and his idea was you could put these oxen and soldiers along Mountain Avenue and you could walk by. And actually you, Julie, and your husband, you prepared, like this is a cut, like a model that Josh did out of these. You painted them, put them in the park, and they were there at the opening. So it's just an initiative idea. And with that idea, I thought, wow, this is an interesting topic. The interesting topic, certainly thinking this year, 250 years, our nation, and how do students in landscape architecture would deal with that topic with a landscape architecture approach. As you probably know, landscape architecture designs gardens and parks, but also urban open spaces, plazas, streetscapes, that kind of thing. So how would students in 2026 in an undergraduate program at Rutgers address the American Revolution in a design studio that is about public space? So, not an easy task. So this is an image of the classroom. And so this map on the left, the red line on the left is the trail, how we are. These other pins is where the students actually are from, and they all were asked to give us a response. What is the American Revolution for you? And this big, on the board, were those things we have so much history in New Jersey, and it's reflected in so many ways. And there are the historical buildings, there are like of course the Washington Crossing and all these other, the Trenton Battleground, so all these other important places. There is a way of documenting them and making them accessible. So we first studied how other people did that, and that's this exercise. How do we in New Jersey review or make our history accessible? And then we went to town. It was pretty cold. And thank you for clearing up the image at the center for us. And it was super interesting also to speak with the town administrator and with Mayor Berman for the students. One thing is like we want to memorialize history, but also understanding the concerns or the goals of the town of Westfield. This is a lovely town, as you all know, right? It's a wealthy, lovely town with a great potential, with great situation, but they showed us also what is transportation issues, and those questions were part of that conversation. Students, clearly you remember that one, right? Students explored in an inventory phase, what is the relationship between local people and these different architectures. These are all architectures from the town in that sequence, what it is. Another group looked at all your stores, and this is an amazing, it's the best mall I would have ever seen, you can say. This collection of stores, an amazing collection of stores, very accessible in this town as one of these high qualities. In the same way, also the map of restaurants is also impressive. So it's a town where you can do a lot of things. And then, of course, students looked into circulation. That map is illustrating what are the main roads. And also, Julie, you remember that conversation. If it's a county road or a state road or a municipal road, that gives limitations on how you can access or change the streetscape. However, with all and also realizing there's not much bicycling in town. There's not much of a bicycle system. We saw some of your planners had developed a bicycle strategy, which is promising. However, there's not much bicycle at a town of this small scale, which I've personally found a little bit surprising. But anyway, starting with this, the students went to 4 fundamental approaches. As I said, the challenge of addressing the American Revolution through landscape architecture design. So, and these teams had teams of 3 or 4, and they had substantial discussions within the team. What does it mean for you, for my life, for my family, and for my identity as an American? So we have these 4 different topics. I will go through them. Start with number 1, designing democracy with a focus on veterans. So the group of Nick, Alicia, Thomas, and Daniel, they took the focus on veterans because on a very early moment in the project, they realized, we're talking here about a war. We're talking about the American Revolution, the Revolutionary War. The Washington-Rochambeau Trail was an important element of a war. So they took, and this is the students' work, not me, they took the Revolutionary War, the star marks that there is a monument in town, how it's commemorized. Revolutionary War is the first of a number of different wars. And the blue marks the time when America and the United States were not in a conflict, like an internal or external conflict. So the very early phases, basically, it is the westward expansion. That's where we have the Northwest Indian War, for example. The consolidation of America, number of, like the southward extension, like the conquest of the Republic of Florida, like how America grew in a way. And then the 19th century, when you look at that, here is the Civil War in between as one of many. The Civil War in between. However, most of them were, of course, Indian wars. Like the expansion of the country came along with a lot of things. And then the 19th or the early 20th century, late 19th, early 20th century, more conflict with government involvement internally, like the Pullman strike 1894, you may know, this was when the Pullmans, as they were like building all these railroad wagons, and that company was in trouble. They were cutting wages or putting people off work, and the workers' movement had a strong push against it, and there was lots of conflict, and the government came in, like American military came in. So these red ones are internal conflicts, and then we go to the middle of the 20th century where the phase is actually under Roosevelt. During the New Deal, I believe there was not much money for doing war, so this was a peace period, interestingly. Then, of course, starting the World War II, and then having the Cold War as the big engine of creating wars, with the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and then actually it gets more and more and more. Of course, 9/11 is a significant moment, I would say, and finally, we are still in the middle of it. You all know the World War II Memorial here and all the other war monuments in town. So for this group, investigating that, and like certainly when you do this as one really long print, it's even more impressive. Investigating that made them think about what is the role that veterans have today. So the first design by Alicia Fleury for the Washington-Rochambeau Trail Park is to say you take the 13 times folded flag that ends up on a coffin, right, and create that as a reflecting pool in the middle, and then having this is the timeline that I just showed you, right? This is the timeline I just showed you. So you could that timeline place in the grass and have this. So this is the situation at the reflecting pool. You could imagine how this is like a quiet space for contemplation, and then this would be the timeline in the ground, and you could kind of discuss also these different interventions and see what was the rationale behind it, the outcome, and how does it impact us today. The second member of the group, Daniel, took the connecting part. This is East Broad Street, and so for him it was the biggest thing was the transportation problems right now in town, and doing traffic calming measures and having vegetation and plantings that reflects colonial times. So you could walk along that and have that as a method. The Grimby Street by Nick is a temporary, it's like a plug-in plaza situation where you could different installations, different moments per year. And finally, the fourth project within that team, by Thomas, is saying this is the Lord and Taylor side. And as you probably know, here, this is where all these monuments are, right? This is where all these monuments are. And so next to those monuments, on the current Lord and Taylor side, do a veterans housing that has, that's accessible and allows a good housing place for veterans with private interior courtyards, and these would be rooftop situations, so with a lot of open space for the individual person or family. And then towards North Avenue, this will be more like a public-facing space, and towards the train tracks, more like private-facing spaces. So that group took veterans as their topic. The next group took Native Americans as their topic, because they were basically the big losers of the American Revolution, as you may want to say, right? So they took the Native Americans as the topic, and they looked at the Delaware, our local Lenape tribe, and looked at the wolf, the turtle, and the turkey clans, like the wolf clan, the turtle clan, and the turkey clan, indicated here. And they took, when you look at their master plan, you see the triangle part, like the park at the beginning, and they have a path through the park towards, as their final location, also the Lord and Taylor site. So Kylie took the ideas of, or was inspired by the wolf. My notes here. the Wolf clan, about the values of the Wolf clan of protection, guardianship, and security. And so her design would create an enclosure in this park so you're protected from the busy streets, and that was her approach to reflect those values of that clan. So with these raised planting beds and having the enclosure around and the totem, like the post in the middle, indicating or reflecting to that part. The second team member talks about the turtle clan, and that is Quimby Street, and she and Avery was very much into adding more vegetation, more trees to the Quimby Street to do that. And more exciting for me is suddenly the third team member, Will. He had a little bit of a really interesting approach, a little bit strange, a little bit, to saying, but he's doing it. So to saying the Lord and Taylor parking lot, churning that into a field, but saying it that the Native Americans had this way of farming to always, every growing season, replant and reorganize the crops, but only so these crops would be reorganized every growing season in a different way. And then during the winter time, you would place, as Native Americans did, place these temporary huts, these temporary longhouses on it, and have offered different workshops, like the bread, textile, pottery, for example, placing those ideas into the town. So group number 2, focusing on Native Americans in this way and expressing that in this way. Group number 3 took a really, again, very different approach, and I would probably say more historian mainstream approach, you can say. Because taking historic, like images that represent events of the American Revolution and project them on buildings and have, like, look at events of the American Revolution and events afterwards. So the Maya's design for the Washington-Rochambeau Trail Park is keeping the existing existing bike in the center that you cleaned up for us in the winter. So that would stay, and that would be the core of ripples that represent, and of course the ripples, how the American Revolution influenced a number of lives and still influences our lives. And so along these ripples going towards the edge of the park, these little round things here, these dots, that would be small engraving stones that, almost like a little Wikipedia thing, tell you some events, some relevant events, and then, like, for example, the Battle of Trenton, but also opening of Central Park, or the Voting Rights Act, or Obergefell versus Hodges. So different events in the American history that you could kind of experience on this walkable timeline coming through. And then, but all of this as an attractive park where people could sit and hang out in this ripple effect garden. For Broad Street, here's an example of taking what Vanisha was pushing for, to say, taking, for example, this is the very, very famous Washington Crossing image right there, and saying, how do you, like, what are the different facades in town, and how you would actually not just project them, but paint them on it. And this design process was very carefully saying, how can you place that image on the facade that it kind of interacts with the facade? So how would that relate to the architecture that Vanisha was doing? And so Imre had, like, her thing was to look at how do you view those? So her design, Imre's design, looks at places benches. So in this little sketch here, you see these are the placed benches, and then the images on the other side. And you would, for example, here at the Sum Ramen, that is the Washington, that is
Valley Forge.
yes, Valley Forge image, and then having the these benches here with some vegetation to view this. And that is like the group number 3 takes very famous images that almost everybody knows, like from high school, but puts them in a different context. My group, the group number 4, has this idea of through the glass, a view into history, and they were, and I remember this is Lily, you're part of that group, and I do remember the discussions that you folks had to say your family's immigration history, because most of, like your parents or grandparents immigrated and came to the country, and how your family's histories related your self-understanding as an American, your self-understanding of the American Revolution, and you very much looked into the time, into the idea of what is immigration and how did immigration form this country. So I don't know who did that image. Remember, like this one. Remember who did that?
Celine.
Celine, right? So from the Washington-Rochambeau trail, trail park up here, the cemetery and church, and then Quimby Street and Elm Street. These were the interventions that you guys took, all under the theme of immigration. And the thing is also, like, one of the important things, these glass panels. That was your big thing to say. The glass panels are show edgings in life size of immigrant folks, and the relationship to history is like when you have a monument or something. I'm here, and there's the monument, right? You look at the monument. The idea of the edging is that today's person could kind of merge with the historic person, because it's this glass edging that kind of shines through. I think that's what you guys did. Reflect this way. This was your idea, right? That you guys did. And so under this note, Tekoa took the, this is again the image of the Washington crossing the Delaware, and Tekoa took that as a centerpiece for the Washington Trail Park, and placing then further images along these glass panels along the park, so you would kind of be behind it and within it to experience that different phase in history. And of course, along the Washington-Rochambeau Trail Park, the etched images, these glass panels, reflect people from the colonial period, Native Americans, American soldiers, British soldiers, like all these different were part of the mix, were at the Washington-Rochambeau Trail Park up there. The connection, that's what Joshua was looking into. This is the that's the entrance to the cemetery, right up here. And then redesigning the entrance to the cemetery so it becomes more inviting, becomes more accessible. And the church, and I really learned a lot about the history of the church and how this was already an important factor during the American Revolutionary time. And that again, you kind of walk through these glass panels pieces here, with explanations coming towards downtown. And this is where, actually this is Lily's, that's your design, right here. And where these glass panels on the sidewalk would be exactly also an angle that you could come behind it and it could shine through. What I find particular from a urban planning, landscape architecture point of view is, you probably noticed that the cars are only going one way. So the proposal is that Elm Street would become a one-way street, which would give more space for outdoor seating in the restaurants, but also would give space for 2 bicycle lanes in both directions. And certainly a bike lane, this one is protected with posts, and this one is protected with these planting areas, so you would have safe biking through town that we believe would certainly improve students' beliefs, and I do believe that very much, to improve quality of life, but also is an active contribution to fight climate change. If you can use the bicycle and not the car, this is a little bit helping to reduce climate change. The other thing that this design includes is rain gardens and stormwater management, because we have, as you just right now we had a very, very heavy rain, and these heavy rains are increasing. And so these rain gardens will collect some of the first flush of the rain. And then this same street at night, you would have that experience of they would be illuminated and give these different images, giving different stories of different immigrant folks and kind of exposing us to these different narratives. And then, of course, the little benches seating there, allowing for casual seating, and the restaurant seating spaces available. And finally, from this team, that's Celine's design, that is for Quimby Street. And I think in your town, the discussion is already to make Quimby Street a pedestrian zone. And so this is one addition to say, what about if the pedestrian zone adds these glass panels? This would be actually, this one is a couple from Cuba, right? I think that's what it is. So have these planters, but like little mounds of grass. And there is this, and Celine was very carefully making sure that a fire truck or delivery truck can get through, so that it's still safe, so that even if you do these individual things, of course, as a professional landscape architect, you have to think about safety and accessibility, that this would come through. And then this could also become like a beautiful nighttime activity area for events in town, where these mounds and these benches could utilized. Actually, so the I was quicker than I thought. Yes. So maybe we have a little bit of time for the conversation. So these 4 themes of different approaches to how do we address the American Revolution and how Westfield would live with it, because this is not about a passive memory like a memorial or something, because these designs intend to shape the town in a way that history is something with a relationship to today, and history is something that not only informs us but also challenges us today for our actions in how we behave. The summary of these projects can be seen in the storefront of AutoCare. We just printed up this afternoon, so that's the exhibit. That you please, if you have a chance, look at their work carefully. Tell your friends to come to AutoCare. We will keep it up until middle of October, and it's accessible and like for everybody at any time. Thank you, Julie, for making that store available for us. And on that note, I would say thank you. And any questions you have, and we have time for a good conversation. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Had you considered, these are all lovely, but had you considered parking? Because that is a big, big issue in town. We've gone through it many years and we never seem to solve the problem. In fact, many times these one-way streets and whatnot takes away from parking.
True, and certainly when I think, Lily, you're one of the culprits here, right? When I think about this design, we did in the inventory study very well parking. And on the one hand, it is an issue, but it's also really well managed. You have a lot of parking spaces. And like whenever we came, we never had an issue to finding parking. It's a question of convenience, how close you can get. And it's also a question of values. If it is essential that you are exactly, is it better that there's more cars even on this side, or you can actually sit there? And so because the car takes a lot of space, and that is an ongoing discussion in any town. So one of these approaches is to say, probably not everybody is a bicycle fanatic as myself, as I am, but for many folks may be able to use the bicycle, and with that also reduce transportation. So we are totally, like the students were aware of this conflict, this challenge. We did a map on parking, availability of parking, However, it is a question of values. How much space do you give the car, and how much space do you give the people? There's no golden bullet for it, right? That's the thing. Yes.
Could you put up the one that shows the front of the church?
Yes. Yep, there you go.
That's terrific. Realizing in revolutionary times, that church wasn't there.
But there was another church there.
No, it was
There was
across the
nothing.
street.
Across the street. So we could do a glass panel with a church in it.
Possibility. That illustration brings up a number of fantastic possibilities.
Okay.
Really terrific. The cemetery one, can you put that one up?
David, what particularly do you like about it? Does it soften the?
I think it softens the area. I think it brings about what is published in a lot of old publications, that it's the town green. I think it's a little bit,
More inviting as a green?
yeah, a lot of trees. It's a bit more inviting. The sidewalk is a lot nicer, wider, and less commercial than what is there now, which is concrete fixed a few times. I like the brick border along the curb
And the greens.
and the green in there.
Yeah,
uh,
they're separate.
I would ask you, Wolfram, have you ever heard of the, who designed Central Park?
Olmsted.
Olmsted, the Olmsted Trail that was supposed to connect all the parks in Union County.
Not heard about the Olmsted Trail. I'm very aware of all the Olmsted parks in New
Okay.
Jersey, which are plenty.
There is really only one piece of it that we really know about,
Yeah.
and that goes from Elizabeth to the end, from the end of, it's Westfield Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
It goes through Roselle Park as well, and then stops somewhere around the Parkway. But, some reminiscence of what Olmsted had in mind
Mm-hmm.
going through the area. Unfortunately, the streets that we have now in Westfield Avenue Extension, North Avenue and South Avenue are
Mm-hmm.
quite crowded.
Mm-hmm.
But is there an opportunity there to get some green space to get from Elizabeth all the way up to Plainfield?
Well, that would be reintroducing the original Olmsted concepts.
Yeah.
Like Olmsted, for example, as you know, did the Buffalo Park system,
Yes.
did the Boston General Necklace, and also like the Newark Park, and so there is and very important for Olmsted was it's not just the park, but the connections between the parks, and that is something what these concepts illustrate a little bit in terms of how you can increase, improve street trees or like green connections along a park. And these are becoming even more relevant for a town like Westfield when we think about street trees that actually provide shade. And allow, like, forgive me if I say that. The first time, this is like 20 years ago, when the first time I visited Westfield, friends are showing me all the awesome places in New Jersey, and there were some really nice big trees on the downtown, right? And they actually gave shade. And now you cleaned up the downtown, and now you have ornamental trees. The positive thing about an ornamental tree is it allows for everybody to see the storefront and see the signs of the storefront. However, I'm not so sure if somebody drives by Mrs. Urban Outfitters if not seeing the storefront or the awnings of that. So what I'm trying to say is that following Olmsted's ideals to say add more like shade trees in an urban condition will also be an active, positive improvement of urban climate and of fighting climate change. Like if you have a hot and humid day, it is currently not so nice to go in all these great stores in Westfield. But if you have some shade trees, that may be helpful. So.
These are very nice sketches.
Yeah.
But it would be more realistic if you showed before and after images before with all the SUVs, all the storm drains, the telephone poles.
Yes.
The street lights and the signs, the invasion of street signs. No right turn on red and everything.
Yes.
It's beautiful, and the trees are too small. A tree has to be over 40 feet to affect the climate at all. It's very interesting, but I work for architects, and we had problems trying to conform to a designer's views with realistic, workable construction.
Number one, none of these are realistic workable constructions, of course, because that's not like the point of the class was, like in this class, it was about this visionary thinking. Other classes, and actually Lily, you will be a teaching assistant this fall in that class, like our construction classes are very detailed about making this in the real world. There's different ways of thinking depending on which class you take. And of course, street trees there's a science on street trees. There's a big challenge. How do you create the soil that the tree will actually survive? Like street trees usually don't live more than 30 years if they're in a good situation, if they're really happy and that works well. So for street trees, it is a very little root space. You have the salt of the cars, and you have maybe some oil even. You have this compression. So it is a miserable living situation for a tree. And so the different techniques, for example, a design like this would give the street tree more root space. And so there are also techniques how to expand the root space for the tree under the paving. So that would be something that is helpful. And you're absolutely right. Helpful to do a before and after picture. We didn't do. It was not my assignment. Let's put it that way, right? I didn't assign that, but it may be a good because here, of course, you see this road is packed with cars and the SUVs parking on, filling it up. So the assignment here was that visionary thinking, and I'm all with you. The actual question of implementing these climate change actions in an urban or suburban context have tons of technological questions. The survival of the trees is just one of the many.
One of the interesting architectural schemes I've seen is Asian cities will build skyscrapers with built-in terraces for vines and plants, and the building is half masonry and half greenery all the way up to the top. It's
maybe you've
interesting.
seen the initial designs for the new World Trade Center. The initial designs, like for the design competition for the World Trade Center, were about like that. But the New York real estate market did not want to waste space in the buildings for that. And so it's a question of real estate
That was
market.
the Daniel Libeskind design with 8 different levels with trees inside the World Trade Center. He won the competition with that, and then came the Port Authority. Said, well, we're giving away roughly 40% of the real estate. What did you smoke? And then that was off scale.
The problem is real estate interests. Landlords need to make money, and terraces with trees and vines on them don't make money. You have to hire landscapers with no fear of heights.
Right. So, but another concept from Asia is the sponge city. We're basically saying you could develop a city like a sponge, and these rain gardens are part of that idea to make sure you have more space where water can infiltrate and be stored underground, in roof gardens, in rain gardens, with treescapes. So this idea, originally Asia developed, the Austrians do a lot of that. Vienna is totally following that sponge city concept. So that is a approach where even in real world settings, we can try to keep more water in place. For the one reason is for reduced flooding, and for the second reason you have water available for the plants in the hot summer. Ma'am.
first, thank you so much for your presentation. All the projects are really amazing. You may have said this in the beginning, but did your students get the chance to present it to the town, like their projects?
We invited the town to come to the final presentation. Julie, you were there at the midterm and final presentation, and you actually were at the midterm, right? Midterm presentation, and so this is when and that's an important part in our education, that we speak with the partner who plays the client, right? So this was a situation where the city and the historic organizations were our client and were invited to come to the midterm and final presentation. We had, you probably saw the slide in the beginning about our meeting with the mayor and the town administrator about the goals of the town, and then their schedules didn't allow them to come. So that was that presentation. That was actually, that's the final exam of the class, was that. To say that in this class, the final exam is the presentation to the professionals, to the client and other invited professionals to do that. And so we also shared, every student, every group developed a little report. So we have different reports. And so we shared these reports with Julie and with the town. So these are available. And one thing about this exhibit at the end, what we are hoping is with this exhibit, that's kind of even more summary than I gave. Like, of course, the projects are much more in depth than I could summarize them. But this exhibit will be a chance for folks to look at them a little bit more carefully. Everybody, please feel free to reach out to me or to Julie if any of these questions that you may have, to see how they can actually be the contribution to the current discussion. Right? But your point of asking, did we present to the client? We invited them for that. Yes.
One of the things about trees in this town, and I don't know if it's throughout New Jersey, but I think it is. The PSE&G comes around and totally destroys every large tree in town because of the wires.
Yeah.
And I've brought it up to my councilman, and I said, this is one of the problems, so many trees are falling.
Yeah, exactly, you're right.
But, they continue to do it.
That is a New Jersey-wide problem, actually a United States-wide problem. And the American Society of Landscape Architects has that on their agenda. Like, we are the lobby group for the trees, as many other lobby groups for trees. So the clipping and the damaging of the trees because of the wires is a very, very big topic. The only real solution is to put the wire on the ground.
But this is the case on Main Street.
On Main Street,
Cross
that's true.
Street has
Yep.
everything underground, and
Well, yeah, they do there, but
Not across. So the
not on this.
for most of the other parts where wires are still up. Of course, it's very expensive to put them now to ground.
Yeah.
New developments have the wires into the ground, and and all our outages and heavy storms is because trees fall. And so there's the real solution would be to put them in the ground, as did on Main Street. But that is, it's this. It's easier to put the wire quickly up, like in my country where I came from originally, from Germany. We have all the wires in the ground, which means also, but putting new internet lines or other lines is more expensive and does more effort because you have to dig it up. But you have more place for street trees. Still, it's not even if you look into New York City and those situations with all these wires and pipes and sewage canals and all of this in the ground, you have to really work hard to find the root space for the tree. But what you're saying is a common problem all across the United States, and the only reason is to put them in. Yes, sir. Were you saying something?
Dr. Hoefer, could you go back to the cemetery, to the entrance to the cemetery, the burial grounds?
Well, the inspiration for Josh was to say it's just like the wall is not stable, it's not solid, and so that could be a way of making it more welcoming from the streetscape. Yeah. question?
Professor,
Yep.
your speech, presentation is very inspiring, informational, entertaining, and uplifting.
We need that. Thank you.
A 300-year-old Westfield, we have full confidence that it could get better.
We always have that. Things can
Because
be
your
better.
talk is visionary.
Right.
Yes, it will cost, what is $1 billion to do it,
Yeah.
but that's a good goal.
Yeah.
I wish I were your student and talk about Westfield. We have a lot of good plans, how to get them better.
Mm-hmm.
I wish you well.
Thank you.
I thank you very much. And let Rutgers be as good as State University
Mhm.
and Harvard are better.
Thank you so much. I think it's a great closing comment, right? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hoefer. And hopefully this isn't the end of the story for Rutgers and Westfield, but we'll give you a little break. You're on to Pennsauken now, aren't you?
Yes, we are going to Pennsauken, another town that needs some help. But actually, a big thing also Pennsauken is a town that is by far not as healthy and nice. But they are looking at places like Westfield as a good example. A really good.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Lily, for showing up.
Yeah, no problem.